Welcome to Combos from the Couch by LifeStance Health, where leading mental health professionals help guide you on your journey to a healthier, more fulfilling life. I'm Nicolette Lianza, and today we're tackling a topic that doesn't get nearly enough attention: the mental health of Olympic athletes. We often see these incredible competitors at their peak, standing on podiums, breaking records, and representing their countries on the world's biggest stage. But what we don't always see is the immense psychological weight that comes with performing at that level. The pressure that doesn't disappear when the games end, and the very human struggles behind the superhuman achievements. I will be having a two-part conversation with 4 Olympians who are courageously sharing their stories. In part 1, I'm joined by Steve Messler and Jeremy Dodson. Then in part 2, I'll be talking with Kendall Ellis and Samantha Schultz. Each will share about the realities of Olympic-level competition, the mental and emotional battles that often go unspoken, and what needs to change to better support athletes' mental health and well-being. So let's dive into part 1. Welcome, Steve and Jeremy. Great to have you both on.
Excited to be here.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So let's get started. Can both of you share a bit about your personal journey, what inspired your path to the Olympics? So that's it. Jeremy, let's start with you.
I guess I'd say I've never dreamt of being an Olympian or never being in the Olympics. I just stumbled on it. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, played plenty of sports. Family was pretty much into sports. It was something that we did just to stay out of trouble and just to stay active and fill the time. And so our dad was a track coach, and so we fell into track as a secondary sport, but we always loved to do football, baseball, anything else just to keep us active and keep us out the house, basically. It wasn't until high school where I realized that sport can actually be a path for something else, and that's when I really started focusing on being better at the sport. I didn't want to just be average. I wanted to see how great I can be at doing this sport, and so I really I used it as a project, and every sport I did, it wasn't just track. I wanted to be the best in football. I wanted to be the best in basketball. And I really just wanted to see how far I can push it. And eventually it gave me scholarships to every university in the States and an opportunity to get a free education. And so I used that to continue my education and see how far that can take me. And then once I was in college, it took me to national championships and then on to Olympic trials and eventually to the Olympic Games. And then from there, after graduating, it continued to be something that was just a constant in my life. And from there, it's just always been something that was a routine and something that you can look forward to and something that really helped with your mental health and kind of keep you calm and constant. And so since then, sports has just been life.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Jeremy. Steve, what about you?
Well, it's awesome to hear Jeremy's story. I wanted to be a track athlete when I grew up, and I wound up having to go to the cold and the snow and the mountains. So for me, it started with track and field in Junior Olympics when I was 11 years old. The dream for me started earlier. I saw those rings and I saw the 88 Olympics in Calgary in the winter side and saw them in the summer side in Seoul and just was enamored by that, and then found myself doing Junior Olympics by the time I was 10 or 11 years old. And for me, that's where the journey started. It sparked there. And then it brought me in a similar direction as Jeremy. It brought me to being a national champion in high school. It brought me to a scholarship at the University of Florida for track and field, for being a decathlete. I wasn't good enough at one thing like Jeremy to be fast enough. So I had to stretch myself out and do 10 things to find my way to Florida and find my way to success. And then I wound up going back and doing one thing in bobsled. And for me, that path it came out of desperation. It came out of fear that my athletic career was over. And that's how I found the Olympics. But the spark started when I was really young.
True. Great. As it so often does with elite athletes, right? That bug hits you very young, for sure. So we know elite athletes often face intense pressure. What makes it especially difficult to ask for help or speak openly about mental health? at this level?
Yeah,
Steve?
I'm happy to jump in. When you're at that level, the concept of vulnerability as an athlete is a dangerous concept. You have people who want you're in competition, you're in a meritocracy. So the best rise up. So the concept of asking for help, the concept of those things, it means vulnerability. If you're going to ask for help, it means you need help. It means you need something. I was at a sport of bobsled where, look, I was on, it was called USA One, the top sled in our country. And there were 20 guys that would have done anything to be in my seat because I was in the sled that had a shot to not only go to the Olympics, but to win an Olympic medal. And I knew that. So the concept of vulnerability was something that was just foreign to you. If you were sick, if you were hurt, the sharks would circle. They would chatter. There was a lot of subjectivity. It wasn't like track and field where if you got top 3, you went to the Olympics. There was a lot of subjectivity in our sport, which also meant that showing vulnerability, showing weakness, asking for help was something that would be frowned upon on your path and your journey. So you learned to not do it, which was a helpful skill. Look, I'm not somebody who says I don't think that everyone needs to be vulnerable all the time. I think being vulnerable is a skill and having a lack of vulnerability is a skill. You deploy these things when it affects the goals that you have. So but the difficulty to your question is exactly that. To me, the difficulty lies in that you're in a meritocracy. You have people who are highly competitive. Same thing happens in the workforce. And I spend my days now coaching CEOs and coaching other executives and founders, and they can be vulnerable with me, but it's very hard for them to realize, and it takes a long time for you to recognize that actually that vulnerability is a leadership skill quite often that you can deploy and leverage to help others, but also to help yourself. So I think that for me is Jeremy, interested in your perspective on that one. But for me, that rings really directly and really true to the lack of vulnerability that you naturally build. And then we can talk about it later, but as you get older and you transition from sport, it takes a long time to recognize that because you never use vulnerability when you're an athlete. Never, ever. The vulnerability was something that it was a physical thing. It was obvious. I have a hamstring that is hurting me. There's nothing I'm not hiding something now, but certainly from a mental aspect, you didn't let it go. You didn't let yourself go there.
Got you. It sounds like you weren't allowed to or wouldn't allow yourself to go there.
You wouldn't allow yourself go there. And there's a lot of skills that you build up as an athlete that are really helpful as you transition out of sport. And there's a lot of skills that you build up as an athlete that are things that are left to sport or to just put in your pocket and leverage that skill independently. But as an athlete, you're not really taught very well which ones are ones that made you a great athlete and which ones are going to be really great for you as a functional human being or a leader or a partner or whatever it is. I don't know, Jeremy, if that resonates with you.
Oh, yeah, very much. It is that level of vulnerability. That's the main topic. It was the moment you show any type of vulnerability, you show the weakness. And so we're super conditioned to push through pain, adversity. And so that admitting that we're struggling mentally or it goes against your identity. And then in track and field, which is somewhat of not so much of a team sport as bobsleigh was, I was a huge introvert. And so you kept everything bubbled in. And the only time you do reach out to your coaches is when you're asking them for the next raft or did I do this correctly? You never wanted to be wrong, and showing that vulnerability was at the time wrong. I guess I don't want to date ourselves, but at the time we didn't have social media to lead and be vulnerable and show who we really are. Our examples were tough men on the track and saying nothing at all with that grit and that anger, and they show everything on the track and left it on the track. And any type of weakness, whether it was a laugh, a smile, or being vulnerable or opening up about anything, that's when you showed your weakness and you lost that lane or you lost the race.
Yeah.
Do either of you feel like it's getting any better now with more of a spotlight on mental health for the athletes currently?
I think it's
Yeah.
huge. Yeah, I think it's huge now. I think now with social media, athletes are talking to each other. Athletes are seeing other examples of how to open up a bit, and they're seeing that they can have an identity and they can show their identity in different ways and still be successful. Yeah, we didn't have that. We didn't have those examples to see back in our days. But I don't know what you think, Steve. Do you think it's a little bit
I'd
better?
say you're definitely more tied to the current athletes than I am, even at Costume Champions, the nonprofit that I started Now I chair the board and we have a CEO that runs it, so I'm not as connected to the athletes that are involved in that. I would tend to probably lean towards agreeing with Jeremy on the surface of things. The fact of the matter is the floor of the Olympic Games, the track of the Olympic Stadium, the track at the Olympic bobsled track is not a safe space.
Okay.
At the end of the day, you're still dealing with hyper-competitive global athletes. So it is where you share that, where you open that up. And I think that's okay. And I think when you ask the question of, is it getting better? I think it's changing. I think it's evolving. And I think it's part of the human experience to have moments where vulnerability is not a safe thing for you. That's part of the human experience. We've been hundreds of thousands of years. There's opportunities for us in those places where being vulnerable there's a reason why vulnerability is, in the definition of it in of itself, is that it poses a risk to you. And I think what athletes are realizing that vulnerability poses less of a risk to them than they thought in more places than they thought. And I think that to me is where the evolution is coming from. But again, if you're on the track and you're limping, that's going to be seen by your competitors and they're going to jump on you. And I think that's still a beautiful thing about sport that I think we respect. When you look at the viewership for sport in America, the 97, the top 100 broadcasts in America on an annual basis are sport. And the other three are like politics. So still competition where people are winning and losing. So I think there's still a desire for that. There's still an attachment for that.
Got you. So looking back, what guidance would you give your younger selves about navigating the mental and emotional demands of pursuing the Olympic dream? Start with Jeremy.
Ooh, I am tied with my job working at the International Olympic Committee, and we work with athletes all the time, and we hear that that's a type of support that they're asking for and that they're needing right now. And so, if I were to look back on my own career, talking to the athletes now, I would say that your worth isn't tied to how you perform on the track. Yeah, we were considered in track and field or sprinter. He's a 9.9 runner basically, or he's a 19-second runner. And it's never just he's a sprinter or he's Jeremy Dotson. He's a great person. And that is, Steve touched on the point that being vulnerable, back to the vulnerability, is being human. And at the time, athletes weren't seen as human. Athletes were machines. They were these, I guess, Olympians were these goddess and gods, and they stood as an example of the best. And that's what they were tied to, was their Olympic status, their gold medals, and all of that. But I think, just if I were to talk to myself, you're not tied to that performance or what you've done, but instead try to enjoy that journey. Now that I look back at it, I never had a great Olympic experience. I wanted to go to the Olympics and get a medal. Because I didn't even do that, I felt like it was a failure of the Olympics. But now that I'm slowly starting to look back, I look at the journey and all the places I've been to, all the people I met, and everything I've done as a person, how I push myself to the best I can be. It was that journey that made me who I am now, and it's that journey that is pushing me to become who I want to be in the future.
Thank you, Jeremy. Steve?
Yeah, to the question of what advice would I give my younger self, that was the original question.
Yep.
I would say that your inner monologue is the most powerful thing that you have. Even as an extrovert myself, Jeremy mentioned he's an introvert. I am a relatively raging extrovert. And yet 95% of my day is still in my head. 95% of my waking hours are still in my head, even if I can't possibly talk for more than 5 or 10% of my day, which means the things that I say to myself, the way that I frame the questions that are asked of me, the way that I approach the things that I do for myself matters. And those things matter, and they matter over time more and more. The research will tell you want a 4 to 5 to 1 positive and negative ratio for any relationship. And I think for somebody who's younger, or honestly for any other human, is recognizing that relationship with yourself needs that too.
Yeah.
Being critical of yourself is okay. It's healthy. It will allow you to achieve things. It will allow you to fix problems that you have. It will allow you to pursue things that you want, but being cognizant of the fact that if you do that all the time to yourself, the negativity that will wind up coming to yourself is, and as humans, we are biased towards the negative. That is, again, how we're built.
Right,
We are
right.
going to be, we're risk averse creatures because it's a safety thing for us. We need the security. So that when I work with younger athletes now, we do a lot of talking about how are you, when that comes in, how are you processing it? As soon as it goes something negative that you can't control, we need to use some cognitive behavioral therapy and actually
Right.
cut
Yeah,
that
you
off
got
and
it.
move it towards
Yep.
something else.
Yep.
And we use,
Reframing it.
sports like, reframe it. When I was an athlete, I worked with a guy named Ken Baum out of California. He was an amazing mental coach who was like one of my favorite people and was so influential in me my last year. I only met him my last year. I was going through some like breakup challenges with my girlfriend, and I was really spinning. And we created like my go-to happy place, which was at the University of Florida's track. I could feel the mondo under the track underneath my feet. I can feel the warm breeze. I could see the palm trees. I could see the Bermuda grass in front, the soccer stadium on the other side, and the orange track going around. And I could go there in an instant, because you can't tell yourself not to think about something. It's the classic. It's the classic. Don't hit into the woods. The brain doesn't work that way. And in order to think about not hitting the woods, you have to think about the woods, and then you've thought about the woods, and then you hit in the woods. Same thing happens in the rest of our lives. So being able to gain the skill of in your inner monologue, being able to have control over that, I think is the most important thing for any of us in our lives, because we spend so much time in our heads.
You're right. 1000% with that, Steve, for sure. So I'm curious for both of you, what routines, practices, habits have become essential in helping you protect and strengthen your own mental and emotional well-being? Jeremy?
I could take this. Yeah. Yeah. Steve said he was a huge extrovert, but he still lives in his head. And so imagine how
Yeah.
an introvert does, and everything is in my head. And so in order to organize those thoughts in my head, in order to not explode and go crazy, I do a lot of journaling. I love to write, and just making sure I'm dumping all those thoughts onto a piece of paper, just so it doesn't stay in my head. And then I can organize and prioritize what's been on my mind. Like, I found journaling, whether it's a sports journal, whether it's a sleeping journal, whether it's just a life journal. I have tons of journals, and I think I go shopping. Like, I get super excited for like different types of journals when I go to Barnes and Nobles and
Love
any type of
that.
bookstore.
Cool.
And it is helpful. What I always say, working with my own clients, when it comes to journaling, it's taking what's swirling around up here and putting it outside yourself. And so I think
Exactly.
journaling is great. Great that you
Yeah.
do that, Jeremy.
Yeah. It's gaining
Yeah.
control over those thoughts and putting them someplace. For me, it really changed post. I went through I come from a sport that has had a lot of mental health challenges in it. I've competed in the Olympic Games with 6 guys. I've had to bury 2 of them from taking their own lives. I've had other teammates as well. And then I myself have been 5 steps from stepping in front of a train. And it didn't really occur to me until after coming out of my depression that, again, the inner monologue piece. And I could look back and see all these things when I was my sport years were wonderful. I was healthy, and I was vibrant, and I was connected, and I was achieving, and I was vitality to me, and I was exploring, and I was curious, and I had all this like safety and security about what I was. And I had all these different factors to me that I didn't recognize at the time were helping me not only become a great athlete, but helping me just be really happy and content in what I was doing. And it was coming out of that I recognized I needed to get myself back into those kinds of mindsets and all of those things. So I started piecing and writing a book on these things right now, but I started piecing all this together, and it came down to I needed to find connection with people. So I spent more and more time with friends, and I more intentionally reached out to friends, and I had deeper conversations, and I can have deeper conversations now post-depression than I ever was able to have before. I needed something that I was chasing and pursuing, and I needed to find myself getting good at stuff and finding mastery and finding that. So finding achievement was a big part of the routines that I would find. And I find that in my gym in the basement, waking up every morning and working out. And I would find that in that part of the process. And I would also get my vitality from that. My like physical health would improve from that. And I recognized going into my depression that I was flat. My company was flat at the time. My learning was flat. I wasn't getting into new things. I wasn't exploring things. Even though I was a new father, I wasn't really all that curious and interested in stuff. So I got myself really into a habit of making sure every week I'm learning something new, whether that's coming from a podcast, whether that's listening to a guy like Jeremy speak and learning from him. And then I needed to find some security in my life. Again, I was very secure as an athlete, just both as myself as a person, but also on the team. I had a secure spot on the team. So having deeper conversations with my wife and with my friends around me gives me that. So for me, it was a broader thing than just one or two pieces.
It sounds like you both work with younger athletes and help mentor them. So how do you recommend balancing ambition, the need for care for their long-term mental health? Jeremy?
Yeah, I used to coach high school athletes, and when I hear that their coach is an Olympian or this superstar, they immediately try to do everything they can to try to impress you. And so they try to show like their ambition, and that ambition is very powerful. It carries them through the worst workouts possible. But I think one of the biggest things is I usually tell them to set boundaries a little bit earlier. As much as ambition and that they put on the physical part of everything, I want them to be just as ambitious with kind of slowing things down and making sure that they do recover. Yeah, it's
Important, very
yeah,
important.
very important. It's that balance is like a tricky part that they're all trying to discover. Newly in the game, they're trying to discover. They think that the difference between not making it to the Olympics and watching it on TV is doing everything possible that they can. And I think they have to really make sure that they train their whole body, or to train the whole body, which includes the mind. And part of that is the physical rest and recovery, and making sure that they do set these boundaries to make sure that they understand who they are and how much they can push themselves.
Thank you, Jeremy. Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Jeremy with an because I love hearing, making sure coaches are helping athletes think about that. And I think that to me, the big and is for them to recognize that they are like chasing something is giving them energy. Like goals are good. Having goals are good, and pursuing goals are good. And if you can just keep pursuing, like literally what the data will tell you is that people who are high in levels of goal persistence, as well as positive reappraisal, like turning something bad into good, have materially less anxiety, depression. So like we're built to pursue things. We're built for the pursuit, and helping them recognize that not just in sport, but find other parts of their life where they are chasing things, where they're pursuing things, so that one thing goes well, one thing doesn't. You have this kind of buffer around yourself, that you have other things in your life that you are chasing. And the Classroom Champions, we've worked with thousands of athletes and millions of kids. And the thing that I've gotten into these discussions with like sports agents, and Jeremy can understand this one. Like with sports agents, they're like, oh, I don't want to distract. I don't want to. Classroom Champions athletes volunteer, and we connect them with schools and school districts across the US and Canada. And it's a little bit of work for them. They got to create content on a regular basis for kids and talk to them about goal setting and perseverance and emotional regulation. And some of the agents would say, I don't want to distract them Olympic year. And they miss the forest through the trees, which is when you give them something else that they're able to pursue and they're able to put their effort into, it actually makes all these other parts of their life better. As these young athletes, I would say, stay really focused on the goal that you have for your sport. Stay hyper-focused. And find one or two other things that you can try to get really good at. And it's going to amplify and augment your sport. There's no doubt about it. There's research to it, and that will help from a long-term mental health standpoint, because you'll recognize that you get energy from these things, and that you feel, it makes you feel better to do it and achieve it in all these other areas, and then recognize yourself for doing it.
I think that's great for not even for young athletes. I think it's great for all athletes. I think they're so focused on one thing that they get indwelled upon that one idea, and they lose themselves. And oftentimes we try to, here at the IOC, we try to highlight other passions that Olympians do, whether they're musically talented or they're photographers, or they try to find those creative outlets to go to step away for a bit, and then helps them come back to their true love of sport and love it even more and put more energy into that. So I think,
Yeah.
stepping away a bit helps you come back to it.
Yeah, and I think even further, and is what we talked about a little earlier, which was like these are skills from a long-term mental health standpoint, which is again, lack of being vulnerable. It is a great skill if you can have.
Yeah.
Put it in your pocket, put it in your tool belt, and pull out that hammer when you need it. Rarely. It's not something that you use all the time. And recognizing the difference. And I've had this conversation with there's an amazing woman who runs mental health at USOPC, United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, Dr. Jess Bartley from, I think, University of Denver at the time. And when I was on the board for the US Olympic Committee for 8 years, and when I was on there, our mental health programs were pretty nascent. I was there from 2015 to 2023. So as mental health was coming into this is a bigger problem than we recognize. And we'd have these like really long out discussions about, again, teaching athletes to be vulnerable or teaching them these other areas. And my caution was always, I think we need to teach them that not all of this, teach them how to differentiate all the skills they have. These are all little scalpels of tools that we have in our lives that you use in different areas. If you can teach them what individual things are, and again, on the men's side, we are the worst at it. No one role modeled emotions. No one taught us the differences between these things. Women, it was role modeled way better. It was discussed way better.
Right.
Every single guy in every TV show and every movie growing up, if you showed your emotions, you got beat up. Like that was the guy who showed their emotions was the guy who got beat up. That's what I learned growing up in the 80s and in the 90s as a 47-year-old man now. So it took me until depression to recognize, actually emotions are good. They have different purposes. Oh, who'd have known? Who'd have thought? They have different purposes. They have different names.
Right,
I can name them. My wife and I get into conversations, and she'll every now and then maybe I don't express myself as well, and I say, hey, look, it's like I moved from China to America and I spoke Mandarin my whole life, and now I'm speaking English and I have a little bit of an accent and I don't have a big vocabulary. I'm only 6 or 7 years into this. So I think being able to help athletes differentiate all these different scalpels they have and help them learn when they're using them and when it is really great for sport and when it's not so good for relationships and the give and takes of life. And if you over-index on one thing, if you try to optimize one part of the system, you're going to degrade other parts of the system. That is the way you want to maximize everything, but you don't try to optimize everything because it's impossible. Same goes for that. And I think that is just a skill that, I wish I would have had that. I wish I would have had that earlier in my life. And yet at the same time, if I didn't have the experience I had, if I had those tools, maybe I wouldn't have gone into depression. But if I didn't go to depression, I wouldn't have the life perspective that I have now. So it's all a gift at the end of the day.
Steve, I actually want to jump back and thank you for your vulnerability and sharing your own navigation of depression, because part of this conversation today is trying to break that stigma. And so I do appreciate you sharing that. And it sounds like you've been a man who's also been in therapy.
Yeah. Yes.
Definitely sound very knowledgeable.
Yeah. After also part of my job coaching CEOs is a lot of therapy when you're dealing with people who are very isolated. The people that I work with are very isolated. They have a lot of pressure on their hands. Everybody around them needs something from them. So trust is very difficult to come by when you're the CEO of a company. So I'm dealing with these things, not only leadership and strategic and operational issues, but we're dealing with a lot of, and physical and mental health, but we're dealing with a lot of mental health and a lot of these things. And when I coming out of depression, it was luckily my wife has got her undergraduate and graduate degree in psychology, and her PhD is on the school management side, but she recognized what she saw. And it was in the midst of depression. And I will say, to your point, I understand the privilege I have to be able to say this. If I was a 22-year-old overweight dude saying the same things, I would be judged very differently. And quite often we talked about vulnerability earlier. Quite often people will say, I'm being vulnerable right now. And again, I appreciate that sentiment, and I really do. But I do not feel like I'm being vulnerable, because if somebody's going to judge me negatively, then that's okay. That's a problem they have to deal with themselves. But do I love to talk about it? No. I also don't love to run. And I do that because it's good for me. I don't like to get in the squat rack because it hurts, but I do that because it's good for me. And when I was in the midst of depression, and it came from, I had social anxiety. I am not a socially anxious person. I never understood people who were socially anxious. I do now. I had buried Steve Holcomb, who's my gold medal teammate. I had buried him at that point, and I did not understand. I did not understand. I spoke at both of his funerals in Park City and Lake Placid, and I did not understand how that could happen. I do now. I like so many things that the best gift I've ever had my entire life was going through that depression. And when I would come downstairs at 5 a.m. to work out, and my wife would find me as a puddle crying on the couch, and I couldn't move, and I had no idea what was happening. I just knew I didn't want to move, and I was there. And it is a very wild place to be when you have spent your entire life pursuing. And at the time, I was CEO of Classroom Champions is arguably one of the best sport for education organizations in the world. And I was on the board of directors of the Olympic Committee, and we had a 1.5-year-old child, and I had a gold medal from years earlier. I was all the things that you would not think that this monster of depression would come in. And and I talked to a lot of people who are in depression now because of the way that when I go and I speak publicly about this, the amount of guys who come up to me and share what they're in the moment, because they haven't seen many people like me talk about this. And I recognized halfway, towards coming out of depression, and I went to therapy and got a counselor. You can imagine the counselor's eyes wide open when he was like, "You've done what?" And all of a sudden I have this person in front of me. And on the way out of that, I recognized talking to my friends helped a lot. I got on medication, a counselor. We made decisions. We talked through these things. And as I rebuilt myself, I got the gift of rebuilding from the bottom. Because when you face a moment where you are asking yourself, do I want to live today? And it's a real question. And you say, no, there's no more questions. That's it. If you say yes, really quickly you go to why. And if you don't have an answer for that, it goes right back to, do I want to live today? And so I had to rebuild my why from the bottom. And that was such a wonderful process that I got to go through. And when I talk to somebody in depression, I try to reframe it for them and say, look, the good news is it doesn't get much worse than this. There's not many worse feeling. Your brain, you can't think. My brain was broken. As soon as I started putting into that, I thought about if I was going to be bobsledding or sprinting and I had a torn hamstring, they wouldn't make me go to the line. But when you have depression, my brain was broken and I still had to go to work.
Yeah.
I still had to do these things. And man, it is terrible, awful, terrible. But the good news is it gives you a benchmark. And comparison can be the root of all evil, but at the same time, comparison can be the thief of joy, but also comparison can be wonderful. And any bad day I have, I can look back and say, it's not that day. It's not that bad. So thank you for asking, and thank you for letting me digress and run down the rabbit hole of that one.
No, appreciate it.
I'm happy to answer any questions on that one too.
Yeah, thank you. Let me shift gears a bit. And both of you, what work could an International Olympic Committee or national organizations do to better support athletes' mental health before, during, and after competition? So let's start with Jeremy for that one.
Yeah, I think just like going to a therapist, I think just normalizing the conversation, first having the conversation, allowing people to have that conversation, allow people to open up about this, allow people to be vulnerable. And yeah, just normalizing that conversation, having a place to have that conversation. And I think just making resources available, accessible and available, not just making it a tick box that can just be buried down, but making it one of their primary resources available for athletes. A lot of time we try to ask what type of support we want to give athletes, and most of the times we're thinking it's physical support or financial support. But a lot of times it could be support for their mental well-being, and it could be one of the biggest things that doesn't take a lot of research or effort, but is often overlooked and can make a huge impact if these resources are made available and if these resources are accessible so that athletes can know that these are available for them, can access them, and can just reach towards them when they do need them. but yeah, just having a conversation and making that conversation available.
Thank you. Steve, anything
Yeah,
to
I
add
mean,
to that?
I think it's interesting to hear Jeremy, right? Because he's in the place
Yes.
to do these things.
Yes.
And I used to be in a place to help support those things as a board member at the USOPC side. But Jeremy is he's being humble of the role that he has and the incredible opportunity he has to help and influence how the world works with athletes, sitting in the IOC's athlete department and working with Kaveh Merabi, who head of that department, who's a good friend of mine. And I'm so proud of the work that he's doing and what Jeremy's doing. I think that, like Jeremy said, it's easy, but it's also really complicated and difficult. And humans are complicated creatures. And they're coming at these things from different angles. Like you can sprint and it's boom. There's only a few different ways to get there. But supporting mental health during, and I think you mentioned after, which is also a huge thing. Once they're
Right.
off the radar, how do you help them? And
Yeah.
to me, it comes down to something we talked about earlier, which is just helping them differentiate which of these mental skills, because if you frame them as skills, then we understand we can improve at them, we can get rusty at them, we can put them in this athlete's perspective, puts them in a physical perspective. Like once I realized that my hamstring being torn and my depression, brain being hurt, it really helped me think about how I can help myself and fix myself at that point. So I think the IOC, the USOPC, the other NCAA, it's a big thing in the NCAA right now.
Yeah.
Again, education is so hard. Education's obviously such a big answer. And I think the good thing about this generation, the younger generation, I think the stigma of this is really very different. It's night and day different from when I was an athlete. I don't know about you, Jeremy, but it's certainly night and day from when I was an athlete. But just recognizing that, again, and nothing and everything in life is good and bad. And you're hurt. You're in this place, you're in this place. What do you do? What do you do to get out of it? And equating those things. Athletes are really good. They're super goal-driven human beings. And just giving them their North Star of where to go to get out of the place they're in if they're having mental health issues. And just like they would in any other kind of endeavor. Because man, I've hired dozens of Olympians. And we do that because like you set them on a path and you point them in a direction and you say, go, and they will just figure it out. And I think giving them a lot of credit in that way is going to be a big part of the path too. So just giving them those tools and then helping point them in the direction, then nudging them and coaching them and working with them and doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's a great question.
Yeah, no, thank you, Steve. Great answer. And Jeremy, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do for the International Olympic Committee?
Yeah, so I'm in the athletes department at the International Olympic Committee here in Lausanne, Switzerland. The athletes department is a new department that was created to really focus on putting athletes at the heart of the Olympic movement. It's crazy to think that beforehand, athletes weren't the stakeholders for the longest. You think that the Olympic Games just happens and the athletes just show up and make the games what it is. It wasn't until recently that we realized that the true heart are the athletes, and supporting the athletes, making sure that everything that they do supports the rest of the Olympic movement. The athletes inspire communities, athletes build communities, athletes can become CEOs, leaderships in these communities. And so
they can become president of the IOC.
Exactly. They can become anything. They can be, they're in so many different levels of life that we really want to make sure that these athletes are supported at every level, from development age to during their career, and then even transitioning out of their career. So we have a lot of work to do. We're still a young department, but hopefully we're trying to chuck away at it as best as we can. Now with the new IOC president, she is very ambitious to making sure athletes are
the first female IOC president.
Female.
What are you focusing on these days, Jeremy, yourself? What's your group's focus?
And so with her just being elected, she's trying to figure out her strategy. And so she had this Fit for the Future strategy or survey that went out to all the stakeholders, to all the IOC members, to all the athletes, to all the NOCs, to try to figure out where she should really focus her energy on. And so she's gathering all that right now and making sure she has the right direction. But from all those feedbacks, from all those stakeholders, everyone is saying athletes are the center of it, and so we should support the athletes. So after Milano Cortina, which the Winter Olympic Games in February comes up, then we will go full force with the new strategy and see what she wants to do.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy. And Steve, tell us a bit about Classroom Champions.
Yeah, happy to. Classroom Champions is an education nonprofit that it operates across the US and Canada, and we've dabbled in some other countries as well. And ultimately, we're helping schools and school districts support engagement, support academic performance, support mental health, support of students, but also support teachers to implement that. So it's a curriculum that is based on what we call the champion mindset, which is helping teachers and schools deliver on the things that we hire for, really important goal setting ability, emotional regulation, teamwork, leadership, perseverance, things that athletes are really fantastic at, and providing a curriculum that spirals from kindergarten all the way through grade 8, and they're working on a high school one now, that can actually be implemented in school during the day as something that is, we supported my kids' school. So people can learn more about it at classroomchampions.org. But it is, the heart of it is, much like the IOC talking about, is athletes. I started it when I was an athlete. My sister's got her PhD in education and social policy. We started it from a point of, I would go into schools, I'd give a talk, and then I'd leave and I'd never see those kids again. And I'd go, if 1 or 2 kids listened, it's worth my time. And we've all been a kid in school and had that happen. Many people who have been successful in life have gone into schools and done that. And at the end of the day, kids learn through people they trust, and especially kids that are in more challenged circumstances. So we're able to leverage technology, create an ongoing mentorship relationship between the athletes and the schools. And then those athletes that are currently competing, not the gray-haired has-beens like me, but the currently competing ones, because we want an unfiltered view of what it is like to pursue your dream. You walk into a school and on the wall, like, dream big, you can be what you want to be. How many people and adults do kids ever get to interact with that are actually doing that? Because our dreams change. And it's why my son thinks firemen are awesome, because they want to be a fireman at that age. And then you grow out and then you change and you think differently, and some don't. But these athletes are that. They are people who we can, because of technology, we can inject into the lives of kids, into curriculum, and then we can provide teachers this really robust support professional development network around it. And then we use asynchronous video. So they're recording videos on video lessons on not just goal setting is important, but what's a short-term goal? What's a long-term goal? Who do you tell your goals to? What happens when you make a goal? What happens when you don't? And through that entire time, and then they get to zoom in between the athletes and the kids as well. And we see incredible outcomes at the end of the day. We see improvements in attendance. We see improvements in grades. We see improvements in behavior. We see improvements in incredible improvements in mental health outcomes for students that are leveraging this. And a guy named Seth Rosenzweig is our CEO of our organization and is growing it. And the organization will reach about 500,000 students this year across North America. And we've reached about 5 million to date at this point. And it's just a pleasure and honor to think about watching the athletes that do this and get to be involved in this. They think they can spend some time with kids and help them learn their sport. And then they learn that they can actually change trajectories of lives, because that is what the research at the end of the day will say is happening. So thanks for asking. I love talking about this.
Thank you both for sharing. You guys are both doing really great work. And let me throw one more big question at both of you, because this does go back to identity. And you both seem like you have found purpose and identity after your Olympic careers, right? Many athletes talk about the identity shift that happens after Olympic cycles. How have you navigated major transitions, injury, retirement, changes in performance? How have you guys been able to shift to that? Let's jump with Jeremy with that.
Oh, and that's the biggest conversation we've had within the work that I do, is the career transition. And you hear about the Olympic blues after every Olympics. After every Olympics, pretty much everyone who didn't get a medal pretty much experiences those blues. You've trained, say, your whole 4-year cycle for that 10 seconds or 19 seconds, and you don't achieve what you want to achieve. The next thing you know, that's it. And you spent 4 years on creating that role and that identity, and you've filled that role yourself daily. It's a nonstop job where you wake up and everything you think about is about the sport. Everything you do is about the sport. You don't go to parties because you're thinking about this sport. You limit yourself from doing a lot of other things because of this sport. And so those 4 years, you're molding yourself into this one person. And then after that Olympic cycle goes, and it's over now. You can't say that you're no longer that person anymore. And that blues hits you super hard. And so I think how I transitioned in the roles is finding those, pulling out the toolbox, the tools of the many other things that I've done, the many other passions that I do, and fill yourselves with that. It's filling those gaps and making sure you're not so busy to where you forget who you are and you don't find out who you are, but making sure you're so busy that you are finding out who you really are. Yes, we ran track, but we're not just track runners. We
Right.
run track. We love photography. We love watching Netflix. We love eating chocolate chip cookies. But there's so much more to you than just that
Right.
role and who you were. And so I think that was a lot of problems, was that transition. Is we tied ourselves to that one role, to that one accomplishment, and we forgot that we're more than just that.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Love that. For me, it really crystallized in when I work with athletes and anybody transitioning out of anything that was their identity, whether it's somebody who sold their company or leaving something that they were always wanted to do. Some people always wanted to be a CEO. Some people always wanted to be a teacher. Some people always wanted to be. And I think athletes are like special and not special in that standpoint. And I think to answer that, you can talk about like how strong that identity is when you are an athlete, per se, and how it is different than a lot of others because you are shiny, you are special. The amount of people that I sat with that had CEO titles of Fortune 100 companies, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Let's talk about me and my bobsled journey. Oh, you're CEO of Coke. Cool. Good for you. Let's talk about that. That's because it's all you've ever wanted.
Yeah.
You didn't want those other
Yeah.
things. You don't understand those other things. And for me, it was really when I crystallized, it was, I am an Olympian. I am a bobsledder. I am a track athlete, as opposed to I am a person who. When I was able to change it to I am a person who. I'm a person who does hard things, which means getting out of depression, which means lifting heavy weights,
Right.
which means doing that assignment, which means doing that project. I am a person who spends time with other people. I am a person who. So the identity change, and the most healthy identity change that I was able to go through, was when I was able to transition myself from I am a blank into I am a person who. And then it opened up this giant world of opportunities that I could have. And I'm a person who chases goals. I'm a person who celebrates my wins. I'm a person who. So that was for me the biggest aha and unlock, an identity shift. Having identity is really, again, quite a human thing. Like we all were part of a tribe, and we all were part of that we in some way. And that is why that ones who were more respected made sense, that you were shinier made sense. And I think changing that and flipping the switch into that allows it to be more active for people and allows them to, people who have never run in their lives can go out and run a quarter mile super slow. And as soon as they change it to, part of their brain goes, oh, I'm a runner. Oh, what do runners do? They make a healthier eating choice. They go to bed a little bit earlier on time. Maybe they wake up and they stretch. Runners stretch. I think runners stretch. And just that little
That's great.
change
Right.
helps people do that. So being able to change your identity can either start in your side of your head, or it can start to change with taking actions, and then it can follow that way. It is a cart and a horse.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you both for having this conversation with me. Really important. You're helping break that stigma within elite athletes, Olympic athletes. Thank you again. Thank you both. And we're going to use that term free of vulnerability too.
Thank you for having us, and thanks for having the conversation. I cannot wait for people to listen to this around the Olympics. They're going to see people out there
Yes.
pursuing their dreams, getting after it, and then their world changes and they're scared. They will be scared. And it doesn't even happen. Jeremy mentioned people who don't reach their goals. I did. I reached my gold medal, and I still went through those Olympic blues eventually. gets pushed out a little bit. And I'm not saying to pity the people who get the Olympics, cheer for them, celebrate them. They're going through this amazing life experience that so many children out there are dreaming of. And we're all just fortunate to have gotten to go through it.
I could listen to Steve all day.
I
So thank
know,
you for this
right?
opportunity to listen to
Yeah.
Steve.
This is Jeremy, but like where you are though, I'm like so excited to be on here. I'm a track guy. So at the end of the day, I'm a track fan, a big fan, and I'm excited about what you guys are doing there.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Steve. Thank you,
Both
Nicolette.
again. Thank you. I'd also like to thank the team behind the podcast, Jason Clayton and Juliana Witten. Thank you for listening to Congress from the Couch. Take care, everyone.